Host layover complete. I worked gate C12 on the red-eye nights, the ones when the terminal S recorded voice sounded like a person trying not to wake a room where a few people had already given up on sleep. Cones stacked by the jet bridge wheels. Belt tug docked with its teeth set straight. Ramp chalked and chalked again after freeze and thaw. Pulled a little at seams you only notice when you re on your knees with a paint stick. The stand had 3 smells that took turns. Rubber, old coffee, and a chemical clean that never quite won. Delays rolled like tide. The incoming bank at 22:10, the midnight trickle from small cities you could learn to say without ever needing to go there. The 0140 dead zone, where you heard only your own shoes. My badge had a gate code they could cancel with a keystroke and a photo where I looked like I'd forgotten how to blink. My sweatshirt smelled like the PBX room because lockers borrowed air from whatever were above or behind them. My pocket carried a folded schedule on paper too thin for winter hands, a black pen with a worn clip, and a coin I found on the ramp the first month, and kept for reasons that felt simpler than they are when you try to explain them. The coin had been flattened by a nose wheel 1,000 mornings before it found my glove. It had the look of something between a memory and a tool. The jet bridge panel was the same at every gate in our terminal, a rectangle with a strip of indicators and a display that said "Ready" in an unambitious font. The joystick was a plastic column whose neutrality you learned by touch. The E-stop was a red mushroom with nick marks where men had hit it with rings on. The readout would show you door height, extension, and once in a while a timer no one admitted using because we aren't supposed to quantify a thing we do by feel. You do not think about the pieces until one of them changes its sound. The belt tug clicks the way a foot does on a stair when it knows the stair. The potable water hose makes that small whistle at the spigot when you push the connector all the way. The whistle dies when the pressure learns its own line. The handheld scanners at the podium beep their little barcodes, a note of brief apology each time you ask them to do their one job. The bridge motors run as if they'd be embarrassed to let anyone hear them. At 02:58 on a Monday, the DGS monitor woke when it had nothing to show. The glass had been black for an hour, a rest that matched mine. Then the black was a wash of dark blue, and the overlay drew the faint outline of a fuselage nose where no inbound sat. On the ramp, 2 lead-in bars lit green at once, as if a marshaller clicked his wands in a joke. The bridge panel blinked ready, then another mode no one used anymore, and then a number it didn't track, 0312. I pulled the E-stop to prove dead is dead. The motors hummed anyway, polite as a cough. The joystick warmed under my palm, the sort of warmth plastic takes when a hand picks it up and then leaves. The cab lifted a fraction and slewed. The bridge seal turned the way a person turns in their sleep to present a better shoulder to the pillow. The extend worm drove 2 turns, 3, then stopped before anything could run away with itself. On the glass nose where nothing was, a handprint cooled. It bloomed as a fog at cockpit height and faded from the center like breath. I have known engines my whole life. There is a smell they give back in the minute after shutdown, hot coins and rain and a thin plastic sweetness. The APU cart rattled at the edge of the stand then, the wheels complaining the way wheels do when they haven't been used and should not be used. The tag looped through its handle said, "Do not use," in black caps since the merger. The cart's cable dragged a small trail in the grit where ramp meets gutter. Air at the bridge sill moved. It pushed across my cheeks and left behind the idea of metal. I hit the receipt button on the panel because I thought my mind had decided the only proof of the hour was paper. The little printer fed a pink slip the way a lizard sticks out its tongue and takes it back. Docked C12 0312. Below that, in the old airlines type that still lived on certain boards in our terminal, even if we all pretended the merger wiped those names away, "Do not greet." I let the slip cool and flatten against the service ledge while my palm stayed on the joystick to feel the neutral hold. 2 more turns from the extend worm, gentle as a person persuading a stubborn door. The cab seal pressed in and let go, pressed in and let go, as if against skin. The door sensor chimed once, and then, choosing modesty, did not chime again. When the panel went dark, Reddy held 1 extra beat, like a nod. The printer cut another receipt without being asked. Served sat faintly on the lower edge, in the way the ribbon spells things, when it S out of color, but not out of will. I locked the cab and walked to the glass. Ramp was empty. The green bars were out again. Cones stood where I'd left them. The handprint retreated by degrees until only clean glass remained, which is to say glass that looks like air pretending to be obedient. We have a number to call for everything, and a person picks up for fewer than half of them. Ops picked up because the night guy sleeps with regret and keeps the handset close. "You seen wind on sea?" he asked before I said my name. "Wind doesn't turn the worm," I said. "Bridge shows 3:12. "Timer's fried," he said, not unkind. He let the silence after that sentence live a second too long. "Want me to send Deke?" Deke would put an OOS over my sign and wheel the APU away and feel the bridge seal and either shiver or sneer, depending on what part of the night it was. I told Ops to hold him and put my hand flat on the Lexan and counted my breath and pretended no motion had come through my bones that did not originate there. "Negative," I said. "We're good." 3 seconds of radio static's little teeth. He didn't argue. He had been 16 in a different terminal when he watched footage none of us should have been allowed to watch. And he never argued with any woman who said she didn't want company at one of the gates that face nothing until something chooses to face them. I took the slip to the break room and pinned it without comment to the corkboard where we keep slips that shouldn't happen, double-fueled twice in a night GPU that burned a smell into its own windings without the grace to die a tug whose throttle stuck when it should have forgiven the hands begging it. Sherry saw it at 03:23 when she came in with her coffee in a paper cup that had been rinsed yesterday and would be rinsed tomorrow. She made the face she uses when a joke might be too clean to be funny. She's been here 15 years and knows each gate's noises like pets. She didn't ask. She didn't not ask. She touched the corner like a person testing paint and then wiped her finger on her sleeve, because instincts do not come from thoughts. That was the first night I slept badly, for reasons that had nothing to do with the hardness of the apartment mattress or the hum of the fridge that my landlord swears is within a good appliance's right. The fridge breathed, and the building breathed, and between, I thought I heard the bridge seal press in gently against air. At 04 hours I drank water from the tap, and it tasted like hose, and I let it sit in the mug so the taste would leave. The way we all do with small things we can fix, while big things stand in the yard, with their car hoods up and no one with the manual. There is a tilt to the world that can be measured when it begins, not by instrument, by mugs, by towels, by the shape of rings on paper. The next night the monitor did not wake. The bridge panel did not show the hour. The worm stayed obedient. What changed was the scanner at the door. It woke on its own twice and set its note into the empty terminal, polite, as if apologizing for being alone. I told myself static. I told myself sensors talk to themselves after midnight, the way old men do on porches when anyone walking by is an excuse for a paragraph. I drank the cooled coffee because the right thing to do is not pour it out. I set cones again and felt the handle S texture tell my gloves who had touched it last. The night was nothing new. At 02:59, a white line rose on the glass again and outlined the thickness of a breath. The handprint came and went. A smell like a person counting coins appeared and was civil enough to leave. I called Ops and made a report into his sleep. C12 shows self-test behaviors, I said. Note 312 again. The way this place works is you write what you're allowed to say into the little window, and the system chooses which part it will keep. The note field took C12 shows self-test. Everything else dropped. When I pressed save, the field blinked, exhaled, and then wrote for me. Host layover complete. It used a font we did not own. I was not religious before this job, and I was not after. The word host in an airport means who brings everyone in when the weather chews up their plans elsewhere and spits them all out here. It means how many free drink coupons are left and whose manager has been asleep since midnight. Sherry came by again and we swapped duties without speaking. She put her palm to the bridge seal, the way a person will press a hand into the shoulder of someone they like without admitting it. She made a face then, small, unbelieving. It was not pain. She does not make faces for pain. She looked at her palm before she put it in her pocket. When she took it out again to sign the ops sheet, there was a line running from thumb to wrist in the dust at the crease where heat begins to collect when you do the wrong thing for a long time. "Don't stand there," she said. Humor delivered into a room we borrowed from day shift. Then she did something kinder. She picked up the yellow towel we wrap around the bridge joystick after cleaning and folded it edge to edge and laid it there so the plastic would not meet the air. We sent no one down the bridge those nights because there was no one to send, which is how you know a story is not trying to make itself grand. If anyone had needed to board, we would have boarded them, and the seal would have learned how to make room for the living, as all seals do when you insist. The first time we were asked not to greet came on paper, which is the only medium I believe when my hands are cold. The printer by the desk where the agents do their show coughed out a pink slip at 3:12 on a night with no flights in any system. The slip printed a header left over from our pre-merger days, C12, docked. A line below in old airline caps, "Do not greet," as if there were a general instruction you could obey with your mouth shut, as if you had ever needed to be told not to go out and shake the hand of a plane. I set that slip next to the first one and no one moved it. We are tidy people. We do not throw out other people's proof. I felt sleep drift around me afterward, like air finding a new way under a door. When I closed my eyes at 9 in the morning, I watched the numbers 03.12 brighten and then settle the way the ready on the JetBridge panel does before it learns to be modest again. We run on rosters that might as well be tide tables. Your body will know your hour before your mind looks at the photocopy on your fridge, held by that chip clip from a defunct sandwich place. Second week of red eyes, a storm put the county under a high wind advisory. The airport sent the notice in a font we never use when we are happy. Avoid unsecured areas, ramp cleared of non-essential vehicles, cones stacked, gate pods latched. When wind comes like that, you hear the terminal learn another voice. The glass racks sing a little where the panels grow together. The moving walkway shuts itself down, and the quiet it leaves is heavy, like wool thrown over a bird cage. Ops told us to keep to our side of the security doors. The city told us the tunnel under the road would be closed at 01:30 for maintenance that would last a day and would last 3. The food court had already wrapped itself in its plastic, a smell like sugar suffocating. The break room fridge hummed too hard and then yielded. The lobby with the digital art wall dimmed, and the art smoothed itself into a color that believes in sleep. At 02:57, the lead-in bars that should have stayed dead took a breath and turned themselves on. Somebody in the tower glanced, wrote nothing, and glanced again to be sure not writing was the right kind of mercy. The bridge seal pressed itself against air with the patience of someone testing a new bed and deciding to keep it. I pulled the e-stop. The motors held their little prayer. The door sensor at the sill chimed and reminded me my mouth had a shape. I put my lips together. Another pink receipt slid out and made a line under the last. Docked. C12. 03.12. Do not greet. Then, as if the printer had held its tongue until it had to let one more syllable loose. Served. I did not wake anyone else because waking people makes them generous and then ashamed. I stayed with the bridge until 03:30 and cooled the panel with the back of my hand and pressed my palm to the seal to make sure the shape it had chosen to remember belonged to my glove and not a skin I did not know. When I walked back into the terminal, the fluorescent above the service closet flickered to tell me how good it feels to be seen. 2 days later, a pallet jack threw a belt and made a sound like a confession. We hauled it out of C-14's ear, and I, because habit sometimes masquerades as generosity, returned to my gate to keep it from being alone. I wiped the joystick with a towel we retie around itself between shift changes because it picks up stains even when we have nothing to spill. The towel had dried stiff that day, an insistence of edges. I wet it at the sink, the water carrying that hosey taste you learn to welcome as proof you are in a place that doesn't lie about small things. At 03:12, the bridge panel showed ready and then held a number that had waited below the display like a cough. Docked ticked in. I pressed the receipt button not to make proof, but because I wanted to hear something cut and fall. The printer churned and fell quiet and printed nothing. It waited a beat, it printed a blank. The blank cooled and curled. It showed, faint as an old grade school chalkboard, the words, "Do not greet," in the way paper remembers pressure. We call this airport Mercy Field, because that's just the sort of name the city gives a place it hopes will bring home sons who have outgrown it. The real mercy is institutional. Closures keep you closer. Advisories keep you indoors. If you think the world is enormous, work any gate you like after midnight and count how many steps make your day serviceable. 12 steps from panel to seal, 9 from seal to sill, 3 to the cones, 4 to the tug. Your entire job becomes a rectangle you can draw lights around, when wind keeps the doors latched and the tunnel closed and the ops line out and the tower advising, maintain present, just maintain. Your rectangle tightens. It becomes a room, a cell, a chair. The night after the storm broke, the tunnel reopened and the air was a little easier. People moved through Mercy like they had lids on their cups again. I slept mostly until the fridge hummed in the apartment and then worked too hard and then stopped and then remembered. When I woke for my shift, I moved through rooms as if drawn by a low voltage no one needed to name. At 22:12, the outgoing bank went off late but went. At midnight, we got a late inbound, and I did my back down the way Captain Deems likes it, slow, squared. At a 1:40, the dead zone lay out like a plate someone put a napkin over. At 2:58, the DGS woke and pretended to give me a nose. Someone in the far part of the airport coughed. The child in me wanted to say bless you out loud to worker air. When you are alone with equipment long enough that the voices in your head match their cycles, small noises become language. The worm said, "I am ready with its bait." The seal said, "Let me remember how to be polite." The panel said, "Do not pretend to be surprised." The receipt printer said, "I will print what I am told by hands that we have not hired." At 03:12, as faithful as a traffic light that is not counting cars but obeying an old script, the jet bridge came alive just enough to suggest kindness. The cab lifted a hair and settled again. The seal leaned, touched, leaned. On the glass, a handprint came and cooled and became nothing, then a small circle of fog at the edge of nothing, and then that too left. Once, in all of that, I saw motion on the ramp beyond the lead-in bars. Not a person, not a vehicle. A shifting of air, as if heat rose where no heat would be. A shimmer, the way summer makes asphalt pretend to be water the size of a room. It came in the path a plane would have taken if a plane had come, and it slowed, and the seal pressed and the shimmer held itself cupped at the sill, as if a person had set their face there to see if the inside air was better, and then decided to be on their way. I did not tell anyone, because telling turns you into a person who is liked for 2 days, and then left alone for weeks, because men and women with jobs need to save their kindness for people who will stay. Not for people who show them that the world nods where it should not nod. A week into nodding, Ops stuck the use placard on C12 because of something else entirely. Inspection found a crack beginning in the catwalk that would be addressed next Tuesday, which is when our inspector likes hoping his calendar will manage his tools. In the nights between OOS and Tuesday, no one was supposed to use the bridge. The panel wore a small orange film over its switch that said, "Do not," with the last word torn, where a fingertip had lifted it once for someone else. S emergency. People who have never worked with machines believe those strips mean anything. OOS Night 1. The panel woke to ready at 02:58 and put 312 where it should not go. The motors hummed past the e-stop and the worm turned 2 polite turns. I held my palm flat on the joystick and felt the air through plastic meet the heat already in my hand, and I cannot tell you with science where the matching happened. Someone had left overnight bag tags at the podium, and wind, or the breath of the building, lifted a corner of the top tag. The little red barcoded square looked like a toy in the wrong part of the room. I reached and laid the tags flat, and the scanner peeped without being asked. A quiet chirp like a bird too tired to leave a tree. I wanted to say sorry to the room, and did not. I took a mug from the break room shelf and could tell which of my crew had washed it last by the way the lip felt. Sherry leaves them bone dry and hard with towel. Mitch lets them air dry and curse the drip rings later. The fridge breathed. The glow under the door painted the tile the color of everyone's knees. I poured water at the sink and let the hose smell lift and leave. The paper towel left a lint line down the mug S side, where I ran it too fast. When I set the mug on the counter near the printer, the ring the mug left bridged the line between 2 of the old pink slips, and the ring took their ink and translated it into a faint circle on my countertop, like a new planet drawn in a Child S book. Day after US, I woke before sundown, with my legs telling me they had made stairs twice in the last 12 hours. I ate toast because toast is a thing you can still be proud of after you burn it. I stood in the stairwell outside my apartment and listened to the neighbor S door align its latch. The hall light sensor clicked and then decided it would be polite another day. I took the stairs down because the elevator's breath worried me. When the bridge panel came up at 02:58, I pressed the e-stop, and the motors made that mild resistance anyway, the way a person who needs you to think they are weak will take the heavy end of a thing at the last second and pretend they didn't up-T. The receipt printed at 03:12. The barcode scanner at the podium chirped twice, with no hand on it. The lead-in bars refused to learn darkness. The bridge seal turned its face in toward the room, out toward the air, in toward the room. Ops did not pick up. His phone had given its banner to a junior who learned last month that if he went to sleep in the PBX booth, the refrigerated air made his throat a place you could scrape paint off with your breath. There is a point where any town becomes your idea of the town instead of the town itself. Mercy Field lives in that point after midnight. The smell of jet fuel you can never entirely wash out of a jacket lives there. The traffic light in the lot that controls a crosswalk no one ever uses will hold red for a car that will never come. The house water hose in the service closet will whistle because a washer shrank in winter. The stairwell between C and D will eat the rubber from your shoes, one edge at a time. The small printer by the podium will rehearse receipts in its sleep. Do not greet, the slip said. The first time I heard the words out loud, they were from the mouth of a man who has never worn a reflective vest and never will. Corporate had come down for a tour and a photo. The kind of man who looks out at a ramp and sees the stand as a white map with colored sticks on it, and not a place where knees remember weather. He asked for the red-eye notes because he would like to pretend a data point could have come to him from the mouth of a machine he'd never brought coffee to. I gave him my paper because paper honors no man. He read the slips I stacked, read the do not greet, read the repeated 0312, and made a joke about the old airline's love of ritual. "Whatever it is," he said when he reached for his jacket and his ride to the hotel with its cinnamon lobby and its easily manipulated thermostats, "don't greet it." His cheeks were pink with sleep he had not earned. His cuffs were clean from the room, where carpets breathed the breath of those who never touched rubber. He pressed 2 fingers to the glass as if to salute, and I watched a small bloom circle his touch and fade. People who haven't done a job this long think the little things will save you. They're not wrong. They're just not right the way they think. I got a mug that wasn't chipped where my lip wants the lip to be. I put a towel on the chair in the cab where I sit when we have a proper inbound, so the vinyl doesn't tell the air how I feel about being here at this hour. I fixed the paper curl in the printer so the slips would fall lying flat. I replaced the washer in the house hose and the whistle stopped. I taped a square of cardboard behind the E-stop so when I hit it hard, the plastic wouldn't slap the panel and make that sound the body hates learning. The panel showed ready at 0258 and then made a small show of clearing its throat. At 0312, in a terminal with one security officer asleep by the badge swipe, and a janitor eating his sandwich at the end of a row of chairs made for waiting that hurt every back the same. A jet bridge I was told not to use extended itself by a degree and placed its seal against a pressure. We do not greet in this profession. We are the creature that crouches behind equipment and moves our hands into the space where other people will later move theirs, as if we were never there. Fine with me. I sat. The motors hummed without advancing because they have some respect for rules. The worm held its teeth in place, the way a dog knows not to let go unless you say the command you have not said in 10 years. The seal leaned and came back. The receipt printer fed and cut. Docked. C12, C03, 12. Served. Below that, the slip took a little breath and tried to make letters it was tired of making and put the faint suggestion of host into the space where our codes go. The first time I raised my hand in that cab so that my palm lay near the plastic column of the joystick and waited for the heat of the equipment to be an answer, I was 12 and not there at all. I was in a classroom after the bus left, running an eraser down the length of a chalkboard line to make it tidy for a teacher who might not have deserved me that day. I was under my father's truck, handing him the tool he called for with his knuckles because the shape of the request was the thing, not the word. I was on a loading dock in a different city carrying boxes with 1,200 cookies inside and 4 lines of printed code on the side to tell me who to apologize to if I dropped one. I set my hand on the joystick and the plastic warmed more than my glove allowed. Just that, a match, a measured degree. The motors hummed themselves into a better approach. Someone on the other side of the far glass put his hand at the height where a cockpit would be, and the print of heat warmed and cooled and left a shape like a cup left on a table where you have wiped diligently. There is no sound when doors that do not exist kiss seals that do. There is a sound when nothing pretends to be a door and finds the lip of rubber and meets it. It is small. It is a tone between breath and a plastic held the way plastic holds, when someone who is not there leans gently in to see if this room is warmer than the last. I thought of opening the sill-level handle the way I do when a captain looks down at me and nods like a person saying we finally got home. I did not. The slip said, "Do not greet," and I do what paper tells me. I sat with my palm on plastic. The receipt cutter made its neat sound and dropped a blank sheet that held the letters in its fibers where no one else would need to acknowledge them. When the panel went to ready, it did it like a person standing and smoothing the front of a coat. My breath took a second to find the pace the world uses when the world has nothing to say and a lot to do. The seal relaxed, keeping its shape the way a pillow keeps the shape of a head for a minute and then forgets out of mercy. I took the slip to the break room and did not pin it this time. I folded it twice and put it in the pocket where I keep the flattened coin so that if I needed to lie later, my hand would tell me how to stick to the truth. 2 days later, Something strange hurt my feelings. At the security checkpoint, the shuttle pilot from Fleet came through early and touched his badge to the reader to open the service door because he wanted to use the restroom before starting his rounds. The reader sang the full green tone because the meter likes him. He washed and dried his hands, and as he left, he pressed a paper towel into the ring of water under the soap dispenser and made the ring lift. He looked at me. He apologizes to me for things he doesn't owe me. And then he pointed at the scanner on the desk where the slip printer sits. "You know you got a ghost ringing your bell," he said, all plain. "Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't say hello." That is the thing about people like us. We keep each other's fears in working order. By then, the days had started leaning into the part of the year where nights steal back an inch every shift. The airport put up fall advisories. They always say high traffic for holidays as if we've forgotten. The gift shop at D put 3 ceramic pumpkins in the window that looked too fragile for anyone's bag. The dudes who work on BS escalators set out their yellow horses and lifted 4 steps out and made the sound men make when bolts insist they had been told to sit forever and cannot understand English for yes. The floor polisher sang at the same wrong hour and the same wrong pitch it has practiced since it was bought. In the apartment, my fridge hummed and then hummed wrong, and then slowed and then found its way back. And if I put my palm on its side, the warmth felt like a creature that had been beautiful before evolution made it useful. The towel I left on the back of the chair dried with edges that could have stood up without the chair. I began to turn it over the chair back to keep it from learning the wrong posture. I stopped sleeping with the window cracked because an air that belonged to no weather would find its way to my face and make the hair on my arms move. I did not draw a map. I thought about drawing one. I did not write a letter to anyone with power, which is the same as writing a letter to yourself that no one will read. I did not take a video or a photo or find a low angle to capture the seal leaning into air. I did not share the slips with Sherry because I have shared slips in the past with people I love here and watched the way their mouths learned a new line when they folded laundry. The night before the bridge was due its inspection, the tunnel closed again and stayed closed because the electrician did not show, and Ops said electrician and meant nephew. And what he meant by nephew was man. He did not want to explain to anyone. And the sign at the top of the ramp with its red text said wrong way and meant we don't to trust anyone with plans anymore. The bridge woke itself and set the seal to ready and printed its slip. The panel lettered its 0312 and sat there. The e-stop under my palm might as well have been the world's mute button. The lack of voice has its own voice. I stood in the half-lit box where a bag belt can nest and keep quiet, and I pressed my hand to the line where the seal meets the cab floor. It pulsed there, a tiny movement like a person's throat when you hear them swallow from across a counter, and you both pretend the sound was a chair. I should tell you about what the chair felt like, because everything else is an approach. At Mercy, every gate cab has a simple chair, vinyl, thick cushion, armrests that have accepted a number of elbows that is easily 100,000, and the same elbow after years of doing this, and a few elbows that belong to people who thought they could try this a season and stayed too and left for reasons that never find a conversational home. I had left my towel on the chair to blunt the vinyl's comment on my habits. I stood, then sat, then stood again. The chair knew my weight. I did the thing I have never done and hope never to again. I sat and left room. The chair took pressure before I did. It welcomed another. The way old vinyl depresses when you set a second bag on it. The way a bed tells you by the bedding that there is a person on the other side before your eyes decide to trust the mattress. The chair held someone I could not see and did not want and had promised not to greet. Calm came with the pressure as efficiently as a ramp rat carrying a lavatory hose outdoors. Calm is the thing you have to believe in if you're going to tell people to go down a metal tube tonight and be in their grandmother's kitchen by noon. It did not speak. If it had, I could have left. My fear is obedient that way. It did not speak. It settled in and regarded the panel and put a degree of attention toward the seal and made itself the proper size to fit our equipment. It was not cold exactly. The air took on the temperature of rooms where linen is folded by hand with care that has forgotten how to be personal and become institutional. I had a caller's surety that if I moved my hand 2 inches right, the plastic would be warmer where the other hand had rested a moment before. "Do not greet," the slip said, "like a man telling you a simple household thing you will ruin if you overthink." I did not greet. I stared at the numbers as if my eyes could delete 3 and 1 and 2. I listened to the motors that had never wanted this, and to the worm that had learned to hold for people, and to the seal that had become, after years of joking about all the kisses, a mouth that remembered how to close on something our office could not invoice. There are names for the hour. Night shift calls it the slow. Priests call it matins, if they are not too tired to be complicated. Truckers call it the deer hour and have scars they don't want you to see. Mercy Field has a number for it and likes to pretend it came up random. After the seal remembered the shape it had decided, and after the chair remembered courtesy, and after my palm remembered to sweat at a certain point on plastic, the panel softened back to ready, and the lead-in bars went dark, and no one in the tower wrote anything down. I stood, and the chair had a memory of me and of the other. Vinyl will show you what your body knows, and when your body knows something, it will do what you tell it for 1 more minute to help you leave later. It kept happening, is what I mean. It kept choosing that hour, the ZO312, the slip, the do not greet, the served. On a Thursday, I could tell by the way the receipt curled on the ledge whether the printer had wanted to be helpful about letters or play coy. On a Friday, the APU moved a foot without its wheels turning, as if the stand had been tipped by a man trying to be funny. On a Saturday, the barcode scanner beeped in 3 notes, like a bird learning one song, and then another, and then the first again, which is as close as we were going to get to anyone repeating a word. On a Sunday, I put a mug on the ledge, and the ring carried the faintest smell of lilies, which belongs to funeral parlors and habits people pretend to like. A month into it, I saw something in a mirror no bar here would hang. The reflective strip on the cab window threw my own face back at me with the sickness a person learns in late shift. The pallor that is not illness yet but could be. Behind that, the faint suggestion of a cockpit window, a pair of shapes that might have been seats, the lean of a face that would have been a face if faces belonged to what we were willing to admit to paper. I do not know where the thing goes after. I have only the receipt cutter, S neatness, and the seal, S habit, and the way the chair will remain depressed for a count of 5 after I go, as if the owner of some weight stands and thanks me in a language that should not be printed and leaves up the bridge. No, not up, down, to the world where everything was promised a landing and not everything got one. When the inspector came on his Tuesday, he put his chalk line on the catwalk and made a face at the hairline start of a crack, the way men who have to ask for money make faces so their budget will believe they like to suffer. He moved the OUS. He turned the panel. It said ready in that unambitious font and did not offer 312 because the inspector was standing there. The world respects a form only until paper looks away. "Are you running this?" he asked me, and I nodded, and he wrote numbers on his pad and told me to sign, and I signed my name and the time the real one and put the pen down and felt a stupid softening in my eyes, which I allowed to be fatigue. I touched the seal with my glove, and it was room temperature, which is where a building lives when buildings are allowed to forget they have lungs. When he left, I sat in the chair and did not leave room, and the vinyl told me in its way that it remembered the shape of the other. When a 312 came, I did not raise my hand to the joystick. The motors took their 2 and 3 turns anyway, and then went still in the exact way a person goes still, when you turn on a light at the exact wrong time, and everyone chooses to pretend they were already awake. I could end here. I could tell you that the airport swallowed this, the way the world swallows every story that does not come with a video that can go in a meeting. I could tell you the do not greet slips keep coming and I keep not greeting. And mercy continues to show up for people who are not kind to their flights, and we all get to be kind in their place. And that is the job. I could tell you about the night my scanner beeped while a little girl stood on one leg near the podium and balanced and set her toe down and lifted it and set it again, the way girls have in airports. Since airports learned how to be rooms for waiting, and I could tell you how her mother touched the girl's hair, and the scanning beep sounded very much like the note a mother keeps her voice on when she says not yet to people who want to run forward and touch something that is not ready. If you want a breaking point, it has to have an image you can hold. On the day, the fog came in at head height and ate the runway lights until Tower changed their temper and we stopped pretending. I stood in the cab chair at 0311 and watched the seal press itself and watched the lead-in bars come to green without help and the glass take a handprint and the printer cut a slip and fall and curl, and I put my glove on the sill lever and pressed the thumb button and heard the little D-latch inside, and I pulled. I pulled a 1/4 inch, no more. The lever's weight answered my arm. The sill moved enough. The seal pressed enough. A line of air the width of a receipt slid into the cab, not cold, not warm, a lilt of old coins and rain and burned sugar a man once made in another country to put on the top of a small custard. From that air came the weight you add to a chair to make someone feel not alone. My mouth opened. My tongue felt the memory of hose water. I closed my mouth. I set the lever back. The latch caught. The seal sighed once with perfect good manners. The panel held ready, as if that was a phrase whose real meaning ends with a period. The slip said, served in the faintest grey, and I did not put it on the board. I folded it and put it in the pocket where I keep the flattened coin and the first docked slip and a square of towel, cut from the one Sherry folded in a way that would embarrass people who think they own neatness. After that, I slept with the window open because I was either going to keep my body or not, and the night decided for me anyway. I woke at odd hours when the fridge forgot itself and made a noise like a person describing air. I got up and drank water that tasted like a hose and let it sit and drank it after and was glad. I started to eat at odd hours, and the food was fine, and sometimes it was a line of plastic sugar I would have made fun of last year, and sometimes it was bread with the thin shag of butter that makes the day remember it has an inside. My face lost its fear of being reflected in anything glass. I stopped checking my phone for proof that an hour had a number. C12 taught me to share. This is what passes for an old woman's joke. I leave room now in more places than I should. I step aside in the stairwell, even when no one is there, because I like the shape of the courtesy. I set a mug on the counter and move it an inch to the left, because I do not need the ring where I put it. I need the ring where it wears its usefulness. I walk to the jet bridge a little early for my shift and sit, and the chair remembers me, and I remember whoever else sits when I sit. And together we observe a red line, or a green, and a silence and a seal that can close on anything our terminal will allow through. Someone who reads flights put a small note on the schedule last week. C12, unassigned red eye, reserve. A joke, a kindness, a nod to a woman who sits and keeps her hands where they need to be when the hour rolls out where no one should need anyone, and everyone does. On a different night, different gate. A man working alone under the string of transit chairs woke from a nap and found a slip on the floor in front of him and read, "Do not greet," and stood up and did not walk down to C12 because there are rooms we all have to find by ourselves. When Mercy S. floor polisher sings that wrong pitch and leaves a dull lane of gloss, there is always a seam you can toe with your shoe and find the edge that lines up the world again. At 0312, the lead-in bars will practice their little green for nothing, and I will be there and I will not greet, and the word host will sometimes rise and sometimes not, and the chair will drop a half-inch, and that will be the end of my story. And everyone else, S2, in the sense that we learn to sit where we can be of use and keep quiet and leave room in any house that will give us a badge. 2 nights ago, for the first time, it did not come. The panel showed ready and stayed with itself, and the seal prayed to no one, and the receipt printer was polite, which is to say, it kept its counsel. At 0313, a minute later than the life I have known for weeks, the scanner at the podium beeped once twice, like a bird testing a song. It forgot in winter, and I breathed as if something inside my ribs had widened. And when I stood from the chair, the vinyl kept my shape for the usual count of 5, and then smoothed into the world, the way a coat laid across a bed for a moment can look like a person in it, if you are in the habit of seeing a person wherever fabric remembers a weight. I am writing none of this to anyone. I am sharing the slips with no one. I am adding cups to no ledge. My pocket holds a flattened coin, the first docked. A towel square, a blank slip with letters in it my finger can feel, but cannot teach eyes to read. If the thing that comes returns, it will use the chair, and if it does not return, the chair will remain ready, and readiness is a profession where bodies are wanted and names less so. At 0312 tonight, a small breeze in the cab, and then nothing. The seal kept its shape. The lead-in bars pretended they were candlelight. I put my hand on plastic and it was plastic, room warm in a room that had done nothing for hours and asked nothing back. The printer printed nothing. The scanner learned quiet. That is its own kind of serving. Do not greet, a slip said, and I have not. Ready, the panel says, and I am. A hand once warmed glass at a height only pilots think in. Tonight, glass stayed glass. Gates this hour collect their own stories. We do not bring ours out at potlucks, we bring casseroles. I will go home in an hour and pour water into a mug and let the hose taste lift and leave and drink and sleep and wake when the fridge remembers and forgets and remembers. I will come back tomorrow and set cones and stack and laugh once with Sherry, because she will pretend to be afraid of the old APU cart rattling like a shopping trolley. We should have returned years ago, and we will put towels on chairs for reasons that make sense, only if you have learned to sit next to a thing without saying hello. The traffic light in the lot will hold green for 1 extra beat because it loves that beat. The security officer will read until the words bleed together and then look up into the glass and see his own eyes and not be ashamed. If this is a haunting, it is the most polite one I know. If it is not, it is work. If someday a door I do not open opens, and a breath from a room no one built puts its temperature on my cheeks, and the slips stop printing because the person who needs them most has finally come and gone, I will still have the chair. I will still have the rule. I will put my hand near plastic and wait for it to tell me whether anything at all needs doing. And if the world says no, I will not be greedy. I will write the hour on a log and initial with the same pen that has never once run out at 3 in the morning. And then I will sit and look down the tubes we learned to build. And I will keep the shape of a person who can be counted on to keep his eyes where eyes belong when there is air that must be watched. The printer cut a slip for me as I stood to leave. I did not ask. I did not tell it to stop. I picked it up and felt it warm. And on it, in the old airline caps since the merger, in grey that did not wish to make a fuss, served. Under that, where a server would print a list of items and prices in a place where the day will always be 11 hours long, the type had faded to the idea of letters, which is where language lives when it knows it has nothing new to give us and everything we need anyway.